I'd sort of had a really tough first 2 years as a scholarship. The first year I broke my ankle at Bradford City. I was out for 8 months, dislocated it, had some pins in there, some wire. So, I was just starting on the journey. Broke my ankle, missed 8 months, which was, which was tough. And I always remember the surgeon saying, "Oh, maybe you need to think of doing something else now after the surgery." And I always remember thinking, "No, like, I'm going to be a footballer. Doesn't matter." I was always sort of single-minded, and got back from that, got back playing in the youth team. We had a good youth team, a couple of good Irish lads. Obviously Jags was there as well. And yeah, second year got back playing, and then I just remember feeling really sick in digs one day, and sort of went down to the stadium, and I think we had a game that day, and saw the doctor and Steve Miles and Russ, and they went, "You don't look too good." So I ended up driving back home and sort of rang the doctor, the club doctor, and just said, I got the worst headache ever. And then from that, I ended up in an ambulance, Sheffield Children's Hospital for 2 weeks with meningitis. So yeah, it was it was a pretty tough 2 years, and that's the 2 years when you really have to make, you've got 2 years to make it or break in terms of developing into the first team. But like I said, this is a short version. I sort of recovered from that, got back playing. Neil Warnock came in. Didn't know anything about what I'd been through in the previous 2 years, but he came in and instantly you could see he just wanted people that were committed to the club, that had heart, desire, wanted to play for the club. And I remember scoring a hat trick for the reserves at Stockport. And phone call that night, you're training the next day with the first team. And again, that wouldn't happen nowadays because there's all sports science saying you can't play a game and then train the next day. But I was in the next day after playing 90 minutes. I think Keith Cole played in that game. He was a top guy. Went in the next day, trained with the first team, me, Jags, full tilt. And then, yeah, Friday, we travelled to Norwich. So I remember Neil sort of saying, "You're travelling to Norwich." And yeah, he pulled me on the bus and said, looking at putting you on the bench today. If I offered you a 2-year contract, would you accept it? And I just said, yeah, no problem. So I think I signed on the bus, and then went to the back of the bus, and I think Brownie or Devs was there. Sean Murphy, there's some really good characters, and I think for the whole drive to Norwich, me and Jags were just up and down the bus making coffees and teas. That was just the way it was. You'd sit down and Cosy would ask you for hot chocolate, and then you sit back down, and then someone else would ask you a cup of tea. So again, it was just that real. The old boys were pretty ruthless, but no, that was all. It was all a learning process. Got to Norwich, and I was on the bench, and boys were winning, and then letting a couple of goals, and the gaffer just said, "Go and get warm up. You're coming on." And just remember going on as a right winger. I was pretty skinny then at the time, could run all day, and obviously did quite well in a 20-30 minute period. And after the game, Neil just sort of hammered everybody and said, he showed more effort and desire when he came on for 20 minutes and some of you boys did in 90 minutes. And from that was me in the first team. Sort of jumped the queue on quite a few other lads that had an opportunity. And I think I played about 4 or 5 games in a row. The Hillsborough game, which is one that sticks out in my memory. I think it was the first competitive game for 7 years between United and Wednesday, and I set up Brownie for the goal. We should have won that game. End up losing. Bennett hit the crossbar from about 5 yards late on in the game. And yeah, that again, like I say, the short version. That's how I ended up in the first team.